All right, so then let's start.
Oh, I'm not.
Okay. Good evening. Today is November 2nd, 2020, and this is the regular monthly board meeting of the Concord School Board. As president of the Concord School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. The business we intend to conduct today is necessary due to the need to continue moving forward and conduct the regular monthly business and monthly meeting of the board. This meeting will include taking public comment, as noted on the posted agenda, by unmuting phone lines or Teams connections one by one during the public comment period. We also encourage the submission of comments via email at concordinfo@sau8.org. And of course, as in any time during the month, you may email anyone on the board. Please note that the public may observe and participate in this meeting by coming to the Krista McAuliffe Auditorium of the Concord High School. However, due to health and safety reasons, the majority of the board and many of our community are remaining remote. So therefore, in accordance with the emergency order, we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access by other electronic means. We are utilizing Microsoft Teams for this meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through dialing and the following phone number: area code 925-391-1169, and using conference ID 237-035-377, hashtag or #, or by clicking on the link provided on the sau8.org website. The meeting is being broadcast contemporaneously on CCTV's educational channel, Comcast Channel 6, or on www.youtube.com/ConcordNHTV, and a recording of this meeting will be posted on the CCTV website. Providing public notice of necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Microsoft Teams or telephonically. The meeting and pertinent instructions were posted on the website of the board at sau8.org more than 24 hours prior to the meeting and are highlighted in the top of the website. If anyone has a problem, they can call 603-513-9000. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. So we certainly encourage everyone to participate, and if you have any questions on how to, please go to the website. So at this time, let's start the meeting by taking a roll call of attendance. Please note that all members will be participating either remotely or here and in communication with the others remotely, as you can see through our big screen TV. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. Please, everyone, mute your microphones when not speaking and wait to be recognized. In this case, at this point, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
I will.
Thank you.
Liza.
Present.
Jim.
Present.
Danielle.
Here.
Maureen.
Here.
Gina.
I am present.
David.
I'm here and alone.
Tom.
I am here and I am alone.
Chuck.
I'm here and I'm alone.
And I'm here surrounded by beautiful people. And Alice and Janita are here as well.
Okay, at this time, can one of the administrators please indicate who is present from the administration? All right, wait a second, Kathleen, you don't have your mic live yet.
We're going to mic.
Go ahead. Tonight present with us is Donna Pally, our Assistant Superintendent, and Pam McLeod, our Technology Director. Joining us this evening via the Microsoft Teams is Jack Dunn, our Business Administrator, Matt Cashman. I'm not sure who else is on. I think Larry is on. Larry Prince is on, our Director for Human Resources.
I'm on.
And Lyndon Jacket is with us tonight to do the minutes. Did I get everybody?
Well, we got Mikey sitting back there.
And Karen Fisher-Anderson, our Title IX Safety Compliance Officer. And of course, joining us also are our two building principals from Runlet, and Paulette Fitzgerald, and our high school principal, Michael Reardon. I hope I have everybody now. I'm going to turn. I guess I do.
Excellent. Thank you, Superintendent. Before we move on to the agenda, I just had a couple items that I'd like to say. First off is, as everyone probably knows, the high school and the middle school had today off. And I want to thank the superintendent for the communications, the multiple points of communication over the weekend and on Friday. Every situation is unique, and I know a lot of people had some questions, and I think your emails and your communication answered them. I'm also aware that there was a misidentification of the number of students in the Concord Monitor. There is only one student at the high school that was listed. They said there were two. Just a bit of misinformation. And that I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of, and one at Runlet. In addition, I'm aware that there were some communication challenges on last Friday. I want to assure everyone out in the district that the administration is aware, taking steps with those, and I know there are a lot of different email servers out there, and so I would encourage anyone that if you think you're not getting something, to check your spam or your junk mail folder and make sure that you allow the student, the district, to send you something. And if you have problems, please reach out, and we will do our best. Tonight is the night before election night, so I would like to take at this time to thank all of the candidates that are running. We had an excellent slate of candidates. All of our candidates have worked incredibly hard. They've done a great deal of research, met with the superintendents, addressed issues facing us, and I know have spent many, many hours listening to constituents and to the families of the school district. I wish them all, and I think the rest of the board, we all wish you the best of luck, and hope that regardless of the outcome, that you all continue to add your voices to our ongoing dialogue. It's very important. I also encourage everyone who has not yet voted to go out tomorrow and vote, or drop your absentee ballot off at the polling site. And one final item, this will be the last meeting for Maureen Redmond-Skura, who filled in our vacant seat. On behalf of the board and the Concord school community, I'd just like to thank her for her knowledge, her insights, and her advice during the past couple of months. Maureen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Maureen.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
And with that being said, we'll move on to the agenda. First off is the approval of the agenda as presented. Do I have anyone who would wish to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second on approving the agenda?
I'll second that.
Second. Moved by Ms. Higgins and seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there a discussion on the agenda items tonight? And also, you guys certainly help me with seeing hands. It's a little up and above.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Not seeing anyone, would you, Madam Secretary, please take the roll for the vote?
Yes, I will. Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
David? Did we lose David?
Mr. Parker?
Tom Croto?
Mr. Croto?
I think they don't hear us.
Are they hearing us, Josh?
I'm hearing you.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Chuck, I'll call on you then. Chuck?
Aye.
And I say aye. So let's try again. David Parker?
David is on the call. It looks like he's muted.
Okay.
Mr. Parker, can you unmute? Mr. Croto, can you hear us?
Well,
Mr. Dunn, can we check our connections?
Yeah. Excuse me, I'll give Tom a call.
Thank you.
does this prevent us from moving on? I mean, we have a majority who've accepted.
We
the
do have a majority, but I don't want to
Yeah.
continue the meeting
Right,
if we don't
hear
have
them. Yeah,
people who
yeah.
contemporaneously can
Gotcha.
interact.
I'll text
So, although we do have a quorum, I want to take a moment to pause while we reestablish our connection.
I can hear them, but as soon as someone posted the letter up on the screen, when I lost the ability to raise my hand or to unmute or whatever.
Mr. Croto, can you hear us?
Oh, now he's muted.
Now you're muted. For a moment there, you were unmuted, Tom. Well, while Jack helps him do that.
I love technology.
And have you had any luck with Dave?
No, I don't actually have his phone number.
No, okay.
Here it is.
No, he's unmuted, but he still doesn't. That's happened to me before.
David Parker is on the call, and he is muted.
Okay.
Tom, I can hear you.
Parker, you hear me now?
Dave, are you there? And Tom, can you unmute?
Yeah, it doesn't unmute. That's bizarre.
Yeah. Jim, tell him to go, Jim, tell him to go out and come back in. Sometimes when you,
Yeah, I've had to do that.
So if you can hear me, Mr. Parker and Mr. Croto, maybe you should log off and re-log on to try to reestablish a connection. And Jack, if you can connect them, that'd be great.
Yep, will do.
Sounds like that movie, The Others. Did you ever see that movie with Nicole Kidman? Pretty places. Sorry. I'm scribbling on the paper now. This is
Mr. Croto, can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Oh, and we can hear you very quietly, so well, we can hear you.
Well, I'd like,
Very good. Is Mr. Parker present?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. All right, so,
Okay, so I'm going to finish taking our roll on accepting the minutes. So the only two people I need to hear from are Mr. Croto and Mr. Parker.
this was actually approving the agenda.
I'm sorry, approving the agenda. Do you gentlemen approve our agenda? Mr. Croto?
Yes.
Okay, well, Mr. Parker does. All right, then. Tom,
And-
can you hear me? Oh, he's frozen now. Oh, God, help us.
Mr. Croto, can you hear us?
I do, and I accept the motion for the minutes.
Thank
Aye.
you.
All right.
Minutes agenda.
So with the agenda being approved, somewhat laboriously, we'll move on to the next item, which is a approval of board minutes. We have the regular monthly meeting minutes of October 5th, as well as the special board meeting to finalize the budget, which took place on October 28th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
David?
No, I think it was approved by Danielle and seconded by Mr. Croto, I believe.
That's correct.
And so is there any discussion or additions to the minutes? Or deletions? Not seeing any. Ms. Higgins, will you call the
I
vote?
will. Liza Ponier.
Aye.
Jim Richards.
Aye.
Danielle Smith.
Aye.
Maureen Redmond Skora.
Aye.
Gina. Just Gina. Aye. David Parker.
Aye.
Tom Croto.
Aye.
Chuck. Mr. Crush.
Aye.
Yeah, and I say aye. All right.
Okay. And with that, we will move on to the superintendent. With recognitions and reports. Superintendent Murphy, do you want me to go directly to our students, or would you like to say something first?
Did you do the special board meetings?
Oh, you are absolutely, actually, I did them both
We did
together.
them both together.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would yield to our students.
Okay, thank you. At this point, then, our student representatives, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. Last Thursday, October 29th, the Concord School District Strategic Planning Task Force, a group created to develop a strategic plan for improving our student safety and well-being, held a meeting. This is a group that began its work last year, but it had to pause due to the pandemic. It's made up of a variety of members, including students, myself included, educators, parents, community partners, administrators, and our Title IX Safety Compliance Officer, Karen Fisher-Anderson. And she was able to attend our meeting for the first time on Thursday. In our most recent meeting, we were able to go through a matrix created from the Perkins Report recommendations and the work of the task force from last year to provide feedback, revisions, or additions. Lots of great feedback was shared by members, which was all recorded to be considered for the district's plan moving forward, and we will continue to meet quarterly.
October was the first time all students who wanted to were able to attend classes back at school through the hybrid model. I'm a part of the hybrid model, but I'm also part of the CRTC. Being part of the CRTC, I must go to school each day, even if my cohort is not meeting that day. The days off for me, and probably for most other students, are days that allow us to work on the work that has been assigned to us and get organized for the upcoming week. The amount of work isn't as heavy as it would be if we were in school full-time, but it's enough work so that students don't feel like they are doing anything, or that they feel like they aren't doing anything at all. It is definitely an improvement over last spring. For the hybrid students, most see the opportunity to be with their teachers as a benefit. It allows us to ask questions and feel more connected to our teachers.
Thank you. Overall, we have seen that social distancing rules have been followed, which are obviously very important for getting back in the building. While occasionally you will see instances in which it isn't, administration has made it a top priority, and disciplinary actions are in place if anyone fails to do so.
Lastly, as many of you know, sports season are coming to a close. Just recently, CHS Cross Country won the Division I state finals. Many kids are very happy to have been able to have a season and thank the school athletic department that allowed the students and coaches the opportunity of a wonderful season.
So this month has been a big transition for students overall, but as the year continues, Janine and I look forward to continue sharing our thoughts and doing more to connect student voice to the board as the year keeps going. Thank you.
Thank you both. It's really nice to hear the news from the school again, and I appreciate you coming in. And please come back and share it again. I think it's probably one of the most enjoyable parts of our meeting is to hear all of the things that the students are doing and their perspective and some of the amazing work that's going on among our students. So thank you. Superintendent.
Well, now you know why I always yield to the students, right? Thank you,
Absolutely.
ladies. That was great. And the feedback is terrific, so I appreciate it. So I have a number of things that I'd like to share with you this evening, and then I can take questions if that's okay. I'm going to start out with our most important topic right now, COVID-19. And we're all, I think in my newsletter this weekend, we talked about how everyone is getting tired of it. But it's important, I think our student reps told us how important wearing masks and social distancing is in order for us to continue to do what we're doing. So I have to tell you that our students are doing a great job with that. And I'm very happy that the protocols are in place and that our teachers and our administrators are helping them and cueing when necessary so that our students are abiding by those protocols. And it's been very, very successful. As you know, we continue every day to monitor the stats, and we look at the dashboard that's presented by the Department of Health and Human Services, and every day we make sure that we are able to handle what's happening. And we still get some feedback because we do have a high number of cases in the state, which has put us in that substantial category. But there are other factors that have helped us to make that decision to keep in school, keep in hybrid, keep our CRTC program opened, and continue to provide opportunities for after-school athletics and clubs for our youngsters. And those factors, and probably the greatest one for us right now, is transmission within the school. You know, since we started school in August, we've had 4 cases. We've had 2 cases at the high school, one in early August, as you recall, and we just had one recently. We've had one at the middle school just recently, and then one in our elementary school. So within that, within the student body, we've had 4 cases since August. In addition, we have also had one adult employee that works at the high school. But in every single case, there was no transmission. In other words, there wasn't anyone else that was impacted by that youngster having a positive result. So any of the youngsters that may have been in close contact with them, and they had to quarantine for the 14 days, but the result was that there was no additional transmission of the virus. That's an important piece for us. That allows us to keep our youngsters in school. Many questions over the weekend was, why was the decision made to close the high school and the middle school, and yet a week before that you chose not to do that at Krista McAuliffe School? And there was some reasons for it, and we did explain that this weekend, but I thought I'd take a chance to just remind everybody who may not have had an opportunity to see my note over the weekend, in that In Krista McAuliffe, our youngsters, our elementary youngsters, are in a very close-knit pod, and they stay together. They eat their lunch in their classrooms. The teachers, like in art and music and the other librarian, those folks all go to the classroom. The youngsters aren't moving about the building. Now, there is some of that. I mean, they still have to use the bathrooms. They still might visit the nurse, but for the most part, they're very, very contained, so that when we do have an outbreak, like we had at Krista, we were able to identify immediately those in contact, and the numbers were very, very small. So that was one factor, whereas in contrast, at the middle school and at the high school, as you know, our youngsters are moving, our students are moving about the building. They're attending different classes with different teachers. The teachers we don't create pods at the middle school and the high school because of the different classes and levels and grade levels that the students are in. So we also know that under Mr. Reardon and his team's leadership, they've set up all kinds of various places in the building for having their lunch. It's not always in the cafeteria, but in other places, so they are in the building. They're moving from their regular classes, as you heard this from our students, from regular traditional class over to the CRTC program. So again, we're seeing a lot more movement. And because of that, we had to spend more time making sure that we had identified anybody that may have had contact with that youngster. So it did take a little bit more time. They wanted a little bit more time to track that and make sure that we were be able to provide that data to the Department of Health and Human Services. One other factor, the amount of space. We decided to, and with the assistance of our Director for Facilities, Mr. Cashman, we went into those buildings and did a deep clean. And of course, Runlet Middle School as well as the high school, the square footage of that building is huge, but we had to clean the entire buildings. We couldn't say, well, maybe they were only in one space, or we had to do the entire thing. Now, we did the same thing at Krista. We did a thorough deep clean, but it's not as big of a building as those other two, so we needed a little bit more time. That's why I made the decision to close today at the middle and high school, go into it and close, really. We had remote learning, and as you know, tomorrow is a holiday, so it worked out very well. It gave us plenty of time. Checked in with Mr. Cashman today, and they were still working on cleaning the building. So I just want to let everybody know why those decisions were made, and I realized we could probably come up with other reasons, and maybe we shouldn't have done it that way, but I felt that that was in the best interest of our students, and those decisions are always made around the best interest of our students and our staff, and it's important to us, and I know it's critical for you. So I hope that helps a little bit in terms of the decisions that were made. I think you have to, tonight, at some point here, we need to explore some things, and we brought it up at the last meeting, and that's what are we going to do as we enter the holiday season? And that's really a hard one, because we know that there's a lot of travel. We know that there's a lot of family gatherings. I just read about a high school in Massachusetts before I came over tonight, where there was a Halloween party, and there were 50 students. Well, guess what? The principal had to shut down the school and put everyone back into remote learning. And I think you heard from our students how important it is for them to at least spend a little time with their teachers and also all of their friends and their classmates. So I don't want to have to do that to our students. So we're trying to, come up with a solution to what are we going to do over the holiday. I'm going to ask Donna. She did a little bit of survey work, and she has some preliminary results that I think we'd like to at least share with you tonight, and we'll expand on this throughout the week. Would you do that, Donna?
And this is just very preliminary, and the survey is just one part of the consideration.
We asked families to fill out the survey on behalf of their students. We had 1,782 students supported on that, and 681 staff members filled out the staff survey. What we found was that for families, we have several hundred traveling at Thanksgiving time, and over 300 traveling out of the state at the longer holiday break. In both cases, about a third of those outside of New England. And for staff, and of course staffing capacity is a big piece of this decision-making process. At Thanksgiving time, we have 62 staff members who at this point are planning to be outside of New England, and at the holiday break, 113 outside of New England. And in those situations, at least as the rules are at this moment, that would involve a 14-day quarantine once they return. So important to think about that. We're considering our staff capacity, we're considering coherence in our students' programs and attending schools. We're considering the typical cold and flu season that often happens at that time based on not only travel, but almost more importantly, those folks who are going to come in and visit us. So people coming to New Hampshire, college students coming home, family and friends getting together. So those are all the different factors that we're thinking about right now.
Thanks, Don. Is the survey still open?
It was going to close tonight. We can keep it open a little longer.
So if you haven't filled out your survey, and that's important data for us, I would encourage people to hop onto that. We sent out the survey, I think a reminder also around. Is it something I do with this mic that every time I use it, it comes off? Well, I'm going to hold on to it.
The Barbara Higgins touch.
The Midas touch. If you haven't filled out the survey, we encourage you to do that. That's really helpful for us so that we have that data. We're hoping to be able to finalize all of this and then meet with the instruction committee. I talked to the chair of our instruction committee, Mrs. Higgins, and we would like to have that meeting next week so that we can bring this information and help parents plan and let you all decide which direction. Should we stay in hybrid for as long as we can, or should we move to a remote environment through the holiday season? So that's the question that we have, and that's the tough one to answer.
So as the chairperson that will be chairing this meeting next week, we talked a bit about potentially having the meeting on Tuesday because Wednesday's Veterans Day. Obviously, we all need to think about this, and then we would have, that would be very specific just to discuss the holiday piece. And it's out there. I've received a lot of emails, actually a bunch today, in regard to this exact thing. So we can talk about that now, or when I do the minutes from the other two instructional committee meetings later in the agenda, we could discuss it then. I'm flexible with how, but I do feel that, we have one instructional committee the 18th, and that's all district typical stuff, enrollment, calendar, things like this. But I do feel that sooner than later, we as a board should really look at it, and so our community too can have some predictability. I have a lot of VLAC students from Rochester, and Rochester just went remote like in a heartbeat. And I had 2 little intakes today with families that now have their whole entire family home. And it was just just this sudden, this is what happens. You get these clusters, and I would hate to have a cluster here. Right. So, I'm supportive with however. We all just need to work together.
Right. In the case of Rochester, they were going to go to a remote, because right now they're in person. They were going to remote for the holidays, and that was the recommendation, and the board had supported that recommendation. But then over the weekend, he had to pull the plug on that plan and go to remote immediately for some outbreaks. So it is a day-to-day issue. There's no day is the same in terms of COVID-19.
I think, given the fact that Mr. Croto has his hand raised and he wants to say something, and also it is my feeling that, we should talk a little bit informationally right now so that the information,
Good idea.
so we discuss and present the information for the public who will be able to comment in just a few minutes. So if you don't mind, I'd like to least have the board be able to ask some questions at this time with regards to that. Mr. Croto.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. So if I could just back up for a half a second. Donna, did you say that for Thanksgiving, 662 staff plan to be out of New England, and for the actual Christmas holiday, 113?
That's correct. And again, we push people, we ask them, and they may not be positive about their plans, but we said to the best of your ability. And the ones I'm reporting to you are only those staff members who are currently providing in-person services. So if they were remote and going away outside of New England, I didn't include them in the count, because for this purpose, we were particularly interested in those people who are currently and expected to be providing in-school service. So yes.
Okay, thank you. So for Superintendent Murphy, can you tell the public who are listening to us or may listen later or read in the paper just exactly what these numbers alone, regardless if they increase or not, well, they may, but what this means internally for us being able to produce a school day for youngsters?
If in fact we have the numbers that Donna just reported around staff, and there's an expectation that if they are out of the New England states and they must quarantine for 14 days, then we are not able to deliver in person. Will not have enough staff. And it's just not a matter of hiring the staff. You can't just go out and hire 62 people. So it just doesn't work. It's tough hiring now. And so that will present us with a very challenging situation.
Thank you, and that's the exact reason that I asked that question.
Right, and in terms of the students, again, our priority are the students, but the question is, in terms of transmission, what does that mean for our student population? And what risk does that put on our student population? But there are two sides to this story, and we also have families that absolutely need to get to work, and they have students that, need to be in school. So it's not an easy decision, and it's one that affects families in very different ways.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Let Chuck go.
Sure, Mr. Crush.
Yeah, thank you. So hypothetically, and to Superintendent Murphy's point, none of us have a crystal ball, and a week from now we could be having very different conversations. But just kind of for public consideration, so if the decision is made to go remote, hypothetically, would we start after Thanksgiving and then hypothetically go back in mid-January, or has there been conversation surrounding that? Are we thinking right after the first of the year, or is that a premature question? So that's three questions all wrapped into one. That's all crystal ball question, and I understand that. I guess my point is I'm trying to start planting seeds now. These are not easy discussions to have. People need to plan for work situations, for child daycare situations and things of that nature. Do you have any thoughts, you and your team, have you given thought to your best practice in that area with the landscape we're currently in? As I said at the beginning of the question, a week from now, you know what? We could be having a very different conversation.
Right, you have summed it up beautifully, Chuck. Those are the dates. Let's start there. We talked about going into a remote model after Thanksgiving break, because youngsters get out the 22nd of November. We have a Thanksgiving holiday break, and that at that point we would have remote through the holiday season till the end of the year into the New Year's celebration. The question is, what do we bring them back at that point, or do we wait until after the Martin Luther King holiday, which would give us those 2 weeks, which is technically the 14 days if they've been traveling and out of our state. So those were the options that we talked about.
Okay,
Or do we
thank you.
try to stay in and go through Thanksgiving and try to stay in and as close to Christmas as we can, and then go into remote? So we're really looking for some input here, and and you realize that the decision we make is not going to be 100%, and everyone has a different need, and I so respect that.
I'd like to make.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So the one comment I'll make to all of this, so if logistically speaking, enough staff are going to spend Thanksgiving with their family that it would put us unable to teach hybrid, those questions are answered for us simply by the numbers. So there isn't a lot to discuss. And I have these, I'm always comparing things to things, and I was a waitress when I was in high school, and I could put like 16 glasses of milk or soda or whatever on a tray, and it fit fine. But one little sweetheart at a table grabs her milk, and the entire tray falls all over the table. Why am I saying this? Because that's the way that this is right now. As ineffective and not perfect as it can be with the hybrid and the computers and online and offline and Zooming and not, it's a balance. And so one glass of milk can upset the whole thing. And so I think in an attempt to analyze and make sure it's the right decision, sometimes it's just a simple matter of balance. And if we can't function as a district in a way that's effective and safe for everybody, we have to adjust to accommodate just the cogs and how they fit. So that's just my comment.
Ms. Poinier.
Yep, everything Barb said. If it's mathematically impossible for us to have enough teachers, then I think we need to be talking seriously about taking a break. And we may not know our January start date yet because we don't know when most people are planning on being back in town and fully completed their quarantine. But we can at least talk about a start date. I realize that there's a lot of people who are not satisfied with how things are going. They would prefer to be in remote anyway, or hybrid isn't exactly what they thought, and there's a few people who would like to switch from one to the other, but they're not able to at this time. So, maybe this is an opportunity for us to step back, return to remote.
Yes.
Really do a fantastic job of remote for a month and a half or 2 months, and come back in January with a more complete understanding by students and families what they want to do, so that we can avoid having any more of this. There's going to be uncertainty, but we can avoid some of that uncertainty by taking a break right now. So that's my instinct. If it can't work anyway, then let's take this opportunity to make it as good as we can, and also, to the extent possible, encourage families, students, families, teachers, and other staff to stay close to home and be smart. I understand that travel is going to happen, but let's be smart about it. Thanks.
When you say, are you saying it's to work to the Thanksgiving break and then take the...
I'm
go
sorry,
to
yeah,
remote?
I was not clear at all.
I'm just
Since there are only 2 days of school Thanksgiving week anyway, it seems to me that we would be smart to start full remote on that Monday. So we would be effectively closing the hybrid season until 2021 on the Friday previous to Thanksgiving. And that way, it's a clean break. We don't have to see if there are cases. And, heaven forbid the case count goes up in the next couple of weeks. I hope that we make it to Thanksgiving.
And we've had that conversation.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed.
With the community transmission right now, I think it's really, it makes me very happy that there has been no in-school transmission, and that's, great thanks to so many people working hard to make sure that transmission does not happen in the schools. But it is happening in the community, and, one of the letters we got today pointed out, the fact that we're kind of wiggling around our own decision-making matrix because of where
I saw
those
that,
cases
yeah.
are.
No,
And
good
so,
point.
you know, if we, I think we need to play it safe. Thanks.
Mr. Parker.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with a lot of what's being said, but I appreciate what the district has done in terms of gathering information. I understand what it's like to have a number of staff quarantined and what that means to a program, even if they can stay remote. I think, and I do also understand that there's a challenge with teaching hybrid, teaching remotely and in person for faculty and students. It's hard sometimes to pay attention to both, and especially when you get into the skill-based areas, et cetera, et cetera. When we decide if we need to go remote, I think it needs to be based on the facts and the numbers, and that those facts and numbers are posted so that we can look at the rationale. Because something that Liza said, I think, is important, and that is, if you truly care about transmitting this disease, you'll think about whether or not you're going to go to New York and New Jersey. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't, but I think that in making that choice, you are essentially asking your family to quarantine for 2 weeks in addition to the time you're away. Not putting a value on that, but that just is a fact. And so to gather data under the circumstances, I think it's important, and make our decisions on that. I make no lie in saying that it is our premise that in-person contact with students is better than remote, and particularly for our needy students, for our students that need therapies, that need individual attention. I think regardless of what direction we go in, that we consider how this is impacting on that needier population, and that we don't just go remote for everybody. There may be an opportunity to serve some of those students, as we did in the beginning. And I credit the district with its flexibility and its investment or commitment to safety, with a reminder that you haven't generated COVID inside your school, as I haven't either, because the vast majority of people, not just students, abide by the expectations and protocol that we've set up. And so hats off to everyone. It is unpredictable, and I think if we're gathering the right information, 60 teachers is a significant impact. Now, I wouldn't think that you could do in-person teaching with that amount of teachers gone. And it's hard to ask every family. That's what we're doing. We're asking families, are you going or not? Are you going to be around, or are you going to be going? That being said, we still don't know what's going to happen. So thanks to everybody, and thanks, Kathleen, for all the good efforts.
Thank you. Mr. Crush. You're muted, Mr. Crush. Thank you.
Yep, I'm good now. Thank you. My finger was not working fast enough to unmute. So yeah, I want to just kind of add on to something that Dave said, that kind of on a personal level through Allie, my daughter, I've seen teachers, and I've been involved as well as my wife, toggle back and forth because she is remote, but also have students in the class. And I have nothing but positive things to say about their professionalism, their grace, their class, their commitment to meet each student's needs. I have seen teachers basically, working miracles every day in trying to reach all the students, whether they are doing the hybrid model or the remote model. So I do want to pass that feedback along. I know that we all worry about, if we go full remote, the teachers, and we have a hybrid, how they're going to do. I have seen nothing but true professionalism and true passion for teaching through this kind of crazy time, and a good sense of humor, which I think is very classy and part of that class and grace that I talked about earlier. So please pass that along, and this is a special shout out for the Running Middle School leadership and faculty, because that's where I've had personal experience. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crush. Ms. Smith first.
I had a question for clarification when we're talking about remote. Are we talking about our September remote, which would mean some of our students with IEPs would be able to come to school and continue CRTC? Or maybe that's just not, we don't know yet.
Right, well, I was hoping that we would have that discussion,
Okay.
and again, we will continue this discussion, but I was hoping that we could bring in our at-risk students and our CRTC kids. And I talked to Mr. Rothenberg this morning for quite a while about his program and the work that the youngsters are doing in those programs, and you know, they're older, so they're really committed, and they're following the protocols and, you know, all of that. The only part of it that not sure about, Danielle, is what is his teacher impact. Right. And, you know, I want to make one more point. Donna reminded me, when we said 60 right now, 60 staff, that's 60 staff, not just teachers. It would include our educational assistants and tutors. So I want to clarify that, just so you all know that.
Okay.
But you raise a great point, and we haven't finalized that yet. I hope to do that pretty soon, but I would be working and recommending that we think about that. We did it in September, and it worked very well.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. One of the things I wanted to be sure we did was give an opportunity for our students to weigh in on this if they would like to, because this directly affects you, and I'd be very interested in your view or your opinions.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask a similar question to what was just asked. So I had the same concerns, just if that certain group of students who got to go in when we were all remote in September would still be able to. But in general, I support going full remote for the holidays. I think there's one, I mean, you talked about the staff, so that already creates complications, but I also just think it'll be a lot safer with all the travel and chances for increased cases for us to go remote.
I agree with Alice on that point. I definitely think that although being in school would be nice, it is no way that we should be risking the safety of kids and the administrative people and everyone in the school. So I definitely think that going remote would be a safe and very good idea for ongoing process.
Wow, this was very helpful, very helpful.
Okay, thank you both. Maureen, Ms. Redmond-Skura, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we have received several communications over the past month when things have been changing, that people are grateful if we can have some, not only as much pre-discussion, but also consistency. The changing back and forth that can be stressful for them. So I think thinking of that as like, if we're making that decision, then sticking straight through the holidays would probably be greatly appreciated from what we've heard from the community.
Thank you. Ms. Higgins.
So I had a comment and a question. We talk so much about the mental well-being and emotional well-being of our students. And I look at the parents and the teachers. We need to not forget them. So when I think of choosing where to go on vacation, you know, were I a teacher in a district that wasn't on my computer, you know, would I change where I went? If I hadn't seen an important family member for a long time and it was the holiday, I don't know that I would change. I would want to take care of my heart. So this piece comes in as well. If a family knows that we have a remote situation, it can ease the burden a bit in making those choices. And they know they have that freedom and flexibility to see the people they love and then come home and stay well. The other thing I want to say is that answering these questions now will give you and your admins ample time to present a more specific plan next week that we can then really look at and pick apart as we need to. I would also invite Alice and Janita to come to the instructional committee meeting. I think it would be super, be a part of that discussion.
I'll make sure they get an invite.
Yeah, I think it would be wonderful. My next question would be, so our hybrid has, you know, the 2 days of learning and 2 days of sort of independent. If we were fully remote, we can keep our same groups, especially at the elementary. I mean, the middle school and high school, I would think, would have to stick to their cohorts, but I think elementary could be potentially have class every day. These are things that have been asked about. I know it's a logistical nightmare, but I want to throw it out
Right.
there.
What you said is we'll have a presentation for you at your instructional committee with those kinds of details outlining the special ed, the CRTC, and how we will deliver that remote, you know, and how will that look in terms of the youngsters in their cohorts.
Yeah, because this is
They
a
are
way
going
where
to, you know, we
elementary
want
could
them
be
to stick
different.
with their teachers, though. We won't be changing teachers,
No,
you
no.
know, or anything like that. If they're in remote right now with a teacher, they stay with that teacher. And the youngsters that are with their teacher now in a hybrid will stay with that teacher. We don't want to mix that
Right,
or
right.
change that for the rest of the year.
Mr. Crush?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor a point, but just quickly, I would just ask Superintendent Murphy and her team, I will say I've seen some really, and I can only speak to my personal experience, but I've seen some really outside the box thinking as far as in the special ed space and arena that it could be cascaded over for the remote options, and that's credit and kudos. So I think we have a lot more potential. We can look at this a little differently that, you know, and look, I know it's going to be hard for a lot of families. I don't want to minimize that or negate that fact, and a lot of kiddos. With that said, though, I think there's some outside the box thinking we can do that, you know, that's being done now on a very micro level that can be done maybe on a macro level that could really enhance some of the learning opportunities for our students and maintain safety. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do for our staff and our students and staff including all aspects of that. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent Murphy.
Superintendent, I have a question, and I'd just like to ask for everyone and for the public before they come in and comment. What is your timeline and what are your next steps, and how do you see this decision being made, and what are your expectations with regards to the board's input on that?
Right. I think that the timeline that I'd like to go over with you tonight, and I did discuss this with Mrs. Higgins, the chair of the instructional committee, that we would next week on Tuesday the 10th, we would have an instructional committee. Now, that's a little bit out of the sync, but it's because that Wednesday is Veterans Day, and as you know, that's a day that we take a moment to celebrate some very special folks. So I thought the 10th we could have an instructional committee. We could provide all of the details, if you will, to the committee. Certainly we would encourage everyone on the board. I love the fact that you'll join us with that, and I'll make sure you get an invite. And then not to put another meeting on your plate, and I know how busy you are, but that we might be able to meet as a board and make a formal vote to support the model. And we pretty much ironed out some things here tonight. At least I have great direction from you, and that we will maybe have a board vote on that on the 12th, which is a Thursday, which is the day after Veterans Day. I hope that works, and it would be could be a 5:30 meeting. So, and it would not be lengthy. We would really focus on just this item.
Right.
Well, it's a critical item, and I certainly personally applaud your speed, because it's difficult for families, depending on our decision, to make those arrangements and to do their planning. On the meeting on Tuesday the 10th, would that be here with public comment? I assume.
Well, I'm gonna look at the chair, and she usually sets
I would
the
strongly
tone for that.
recommend
Well, yeah,
that
this has to be a community.
Would you like it here? And
I would like it to include
and
public
plenty of
comment. I think
public
it's
comment,
important.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've done that before. Yep.
Okay, excellent, if that's possible. And we still have some more items to discuss. Does any of the board members have additional
Mr.
questions at this time? Mr. Croto.
Tom and I see Dave.
Mr. Croto, go ahead.
Yep, thanks. I was slow on the trigger finger here. So this does not need to be answered right now, but it does need to be considered. I think, I feel very strongly about it, that if we are going to close down essentially our buildings, we have a lot of hourly paid employees who will be dependent on that money, and that needs to be considered very strongly as we move forward. And I'd be happy to, talk about that in any other format. I don't think it needs to be discussed right now. I think it should be something that Superintendent Murphy comes up with, along with Jack Dunn, and give a proposal to the board. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom. Those are great. It's a great reminder. We have been talking about our bus drivers, our food service, and our, all our admin folks. And so, yes, we are working on putting plans together to address that.
And I just want to chime in, excuse me, that we do have some folks on leaves of absence on FFCRA. So those folks will have to be taken into account as well.
Right. Thank you, Larry.
Yes, there's a lot of folks that are impacted by this decision, and I appreciate everyone's insight. Do we have other questions from board members? I don't. Oh, David, Mr. Parker, I don't see your hand, but I'm told you have your hand up.
Thank you. As I've been thinking about this, I can appreciate Barb's point about people needing to go see family or loved ones from a distance. And it led me to think that, who are we to decide what risk they want to take? Yeah. Some people feel really safe out there, and they feel that they can manage themselves on the way down to New Jersey by, following the protocol that many of us follow day to day. So it's a little presumptuous for us to decide what risk we want them to take or can take. And truly, the sooner we can make some of these decisions, it is really going to be helpful for those families. Again, that being said, I worry about the people that need to be seen and the challenges that are part of that. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I had one other point.
Go ahead.
I had one more point. If the election turns out the way I want it to, I may be celebrating for the rest of November, so I'm not sure I'll be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Other questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Superintendent, the one other question I would have, and it's probably not necessarily at this time, but I would ask what testing is going to be available for teachers over the next few months, should they desire or want to be tested. And I know that may not be something you're prepared to address right now, but it is a question that I have. Because that is another facet of our mitigation strategy. So
thank you. I'll look into that. I'm not prepared tonight to answer that.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
And then I know that the public is going to have a lot of questions on this. Let me head off one right now, and that is, I'm sure that someone will come up and say, well, why can't we just make the teachers stay in New Hampshire? And that is not something we can do. That would certainly not be something that would be that we would want to do, or if we even could do that necessarily, because of the reasons we discussed it. But that's not really an option. So we need to be aware of people's plans, and we need to accommodate them appropriately. So I'm sure the public will have questions both tonight and on Tuesday night. But before we go to public comment, What else do you have to discuss with the board?
Right, just a couple of things that I usually always try to apprise you of, and that the first issue is our anti-racism work, and I thought I would update you on that. Our next anti-racism advisory meeting will be held on November 10th at 3:30. That will be done virtually. We have about 30 folks who join us. Just recently, our administrative team, our admin council, which is about 30 of our administrators running all programs across district, received a 3-hour training. Was their first training session with New Hampshire Listens. There will be 4 more 2-hour sessions, so another 8 hours of training for our administrators around the issues of racism, racial equity, discrimination, all of those. And again, that will be facilitated by our folks from UNH, from New Hampshire Listens. In addition, we have also started a book study, or book club study, if you will. And every month when we meet, our administrative council, we're reading the book, Why Do All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And it's an excellent, excellent book. And so we just did our first section of the book, and each month we'll be doing another section and sharing some of the components of the book with each other. We had great discussion last week. So again, facilitated by our, Donna Pally facilitated that discussion for us. Her teacher came out in true fashion and had great questions for the team. So it was fun. We have really begun the work of just beginning to lay some foundation work with some of the subcommittees. We know that up at the high school, there's a group that are working on restorative justice practices. Tim Herbert is facilitating, beginning that work with the team. They started that work last year and are continuing it. We'll also be working with Suffolk University to help us with that work. In addition, under the leadership of Anne Marie DiPasquale, we began to lay the foundations for what about recruitment, mentoring, and retention of faculty and staff that represent our student demographics. And we had a great conversation with an executive director. I wrote his name down so I wouldn't forget. Richter Craig, executive director of the Black Educators, and he's stationed in Washington, D.C., and was awesome with us, and was more than willing to extend a hand, wants to come to New Hampshire, was excited to hear about our work, and so we just began the foundations. We came up with a list of folks that we would like to have on the committee, including folks from the community, certainly our students, parents. So we're just beginning that work, and we'll report out on both of those subcommittees at our November 10th meeting. The other very important issue, and it was part of the action plan that we developed, was around what we would call a data dig, and that was at the high school, so that we could look at various pieces of information that would help us understand if and where inequalities exist, from who's in the AP classes to the types of discipline, who's receiving the discipline. All of those issues will be part of the data dig, as we call it, in order to help the committee understand next steps. And that's part of any research and design as we begin to roll out this effort. So it's kind of where we are right now. I'm happy with the progress. I wish it could happen faster, but we're trying to get done as much as we can right now. So any questions on that?
When do you sleep, Kathleen?
Well, I guess I have. First of all, I certainly want to applaud you and encourage you on the data, because getting information is key for understanding where we stand, where we've been, and charting out where we need to go. I guess my question would be, and I don't want to put our students on the spot, but I'll ask you, how do the students feel regarding our efforts in this area, and do they, what is their feedback, and do they feel that we're making positive and progress as we move forward? And are they satisfied? Are they happy? Are they disappointed?
I'm going to say what I think, okay, and they can. But then I want to, as always, I want to hear from them. But I don't think they think we're moving fast enough, and that we're doing enough. I just sense that. I don't really have any evidence of that, but for some reason I do feel that way, and we want to do everything we can, but it does take time, and it's about developing relationships. Now we have a relationship with a wonderful man who's going to help us with recruiting and retention, and we're beginning to develop those relationships, and I think those are important. We've been using some of our committee members to help us, but I'm going to guess that the students would hope that we could move faster and address some of these issues sooner than later. I mean, we have curriculum issues that are huge, but we know right now is not, I can't really ask teachers to develop curriculum, but the teachers know they need to do it. They're not surprised by this, but we'll probably, under Donna's leadership, be able to address some of that in the summer as we look at social studies and language arts. But again, I think the students probably wish we were working faster and harder and doing this in quicker, but I'm going to let them speak.
So I would say you're correct in the fact that overwhelmingly students wish more was happening faster, but I understand that there is a time frame for all these things, so I would just encourage everyone to be more transparent and communicate to everyone about what you're doing and how long it will take, because even though there is a push for it to happen quickly, I think if everyone understood the timeline and how things are working out and the steps that you're taking, it would put people more at ease that progress is actually being made. Do you want to talk?
I definitely agree that students would want the push, and I definitely agree with Alice with definitely explaining more what's happening and allowing the community to know what steps you're taking. But I also think it's really important that you're taking your time and making sure that you're doing everything right, and to really explain to them that, we're doing this for you, and although it won't happen necessarily as fast as you want it, we're doing it the speed that will make sure that every adult understands what precautions need to be taken and whatnot.
Thank you very much for your input. And Superintendent, the time for our school district for hiring is always the spring. It's sometime in April or May or June. And would like to hear at one of your future reports about any changes you think with regards to recruiting and I know that things take time and that it's not, there are some major issues going on right now in our school district as well. But I think people would like to hear if we're going to do something a little different with recruiting, or something that we're going to try that's going to be more proactive for that April, May, June timeframe. And look forward to hearing from you on that as well.
Great, and I didn't say it earlier, but our HR director, Mr. Prince, is involved in this committee, working right alongside us. So, I know that he's very excited about this work, and so we'll have a report for you in the spring.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your candid answers and your input. Does anyone else have any questions for the superintendent?
Just one more thing.
Go ahead.
One more thing, and
you can keep going,
then I'll be
Kathleen, to
done.
cover it all.
I promise I'll be done, but I just wanted to update you a little bit on the work around the Perkins report. And I try to update you that every month on that. As you know, Karen Fisher-Anderson, your Title IX Safety Compliance Officer, has been out and about doing a lot of work and a lot of training, and especially work around policy and procedures, which has been incredibly important for our district. In addition, though, I think that long before we started this work in the spring, before COVID-19 hit, you had a strategic planning committee that addressed this work and took the Perkins report and began to do some work. So I asked Donna, I think Alice referred to it a little bit tonight in her report, and I also asked Donna to speak to it because she's leading the charge in terms of that work around the Perkins report. So can you jump in? Thank you.
But I agree that Alice did a good job of summarizing, and she's part of the group. She mentioned the strategic planning group that was started a year ago, and it was formed up to respond to that second report that Attorney Perkins made for us. The group includes staff, students, parents, members of partner organizations in the community. Those include DCYF, the Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, the Crisis Center of Central New Hampshire, Merrimack County Advocacy Center, Riverbend Community Mental Health, the Concord Police. When Karen Fisher Anderson came on as our Compliance and Title IX officer, we reviewed that work of the group with her. She used that in part to build a plan, that plan matrix that she's shared with you that has been on her website, her new website. The group, the strategic planning group, as Alice mentioned, we went into remote, I guess, deep remote when COVID hit. But we've come back out and we met last week, and Karen was with us and was able to go at length through that matrix and get feedback from the group, and we got quite a bit of feedback, so we'll be doing some revisions to that matrix and reposting that. But as Kathleen said, lots of policy work going on, lots of training going on, and Karen's been leading the charge on that all through the summer into the fall. And some exciting news, which is that there's a child advocate who will be beginning to be working at Concord High School starting in the next weeks. She's just gone through the process at central office. She's coming to us through a grant through the Crisis Center of Central New Hampshire, and she'll be available several days a week at the high school doing work on healthy relationships and preventing sexual violence. And so we're very excited. She'll be working closely with Karen as well. So that's a little bit of update.
Thank you. I apologize, Superintendent. I did not have that on my agenda, but I'm glad we could make a report on this very important topic.
We should have put it on. It didn't get on, but I just wanted to update you on that.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's the end of my report. I was going to say I'm done, but I don't want to do that.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your topics tonight. Mr. Dunn, are we ready for public comment on agenda items only?
Well, I have a hand raised by Howard Madison, or Madison Howard. If you would state your name and where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Yep. Hi, my name is Madison Howard. I'm a senior at Concord High School. If it's okay, I just wanted to give my opinion on switching to remote.
Of course.
Awesome. So I just wanted to say I'm a student at Concord, as I mentioned, and so I have been fully remote since the beginning of the year, and I'm continuing to be remote. But right now, in my opinion, I really feel that it's best to immediately go to remote learning instead of waiting until the holidays. We're seeing a national trend in a spike in cases, and I think it's concerning right now, especially considering the schools are shutting down until Thursday. I think it makes it really difficult for families if they are going back and forth. It makes childcare difficult, so I really feel that it would be best to go remote now, at least for the high school. That makes childcare less of an issue, and that would really help families, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack jumped right in there, but will remind everyone that we want to hear your opinion. Per our policy, there is a 5-minute limit. If you would like to make a comment, you can do so through Teams or over the phone, and that phone number is on our website. And Mr. Dunn, would you repeat that phone number, or can you repeat that phone number? I'm putting you on the spot here right now.
No, it's okay. I created a little presentation prior. So the number is 925-391-1169, conference ID 423-461-055#. And right now, I do have a member that is listed as parent guest. If you would state your name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, I don't really want to say my name because I don't want to give my child away. I'm just concerned parents in regards to going remote. If we do make that choice,
I'm sorry, I really cannot hear anything. I'm not going to be able to take the minutes. Ma'am, you sound like you're underwater. I can't hear anything.
I wonder if her connection's
Can we try again? Thank you.
Did we lose that connection?
No, I see her there in mute, unless there's multiple people logging in, so let's see if she comes back. I mean, in the meantime, I don't have anybody else. Somebody has texted, I'll try again. So let's see if they log out, log back in.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the room?
Let's say, Mr. Dunn, is there anyone else that we could listen to and then have this person try to reconnect and then get to them just a little bit later?
There are no phone numbers or nobody with their hand raised at the moment. But the one that had just spoke appears to have logged off. So I'll wait for her to chime back in.
Okay, let's take a few minutes because sometimes it is a little difficult for people to come in, and once again I'll remind this is a public comment session for agenda items. There will be another public comment session at the end of our meeting tonight, which is on any subject, which is in accordance with our policy. We do want to hear you, and of course anyone who wishes to express their opinion can email it to concordinfo@sau8.org, or can, as always, email the board. Mr. Dunn, do we have anyone waiting?
Okay. Rachel Goldwasser, I apologize if I got your name wrong, but you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Rachel Goldwasser. I have 2 children at CMS. I was just going to suggest, I missed the beginning of the meeting, but it sounds like a lot of important issues are going to be raised at the instructional committee meeting. Those meetings have in the past been, or in the recent past, been in person at the high school with a challenge for community members to comment in public because of the nature of the way those meetings have operated historically. Given the subject matter that's being discussed, I would suggest that the instructional committee consider taking public comment on Teams or in some other method given the fact that the subject matter is going to impact a lot of families. So I think people are going to hear that this is an important topic that they'd like to participate in, and facilitating means of doing so would be a nice idea to consider.
Thank you, Ms. Goldwasser. I asked the exact same thing to the superintendent a few minutes ago and requested that the meeting on Tuesday be one that is interactive and accepts public comment. So hopefully we can arrange that. Mr. Dunn, anyone else?
So the one that had come in under parent appears to be back on, unless I have duplicates. So if she wants to chime back in, please go ahead. This is right. I will not, okay. I will write in. I'm not sure what's happening with my microphone. So that's what you just wrote in the chat. So we will take that at the moment. And if somehow things clear up, maybe Mr. Richards, you can acknowledge that. Okay?
Okay, absolutely. Yes, so if the microphone issues clear up, we'd certainly want to hear from you either now or at the end of the meeting. If not, we are more than happy to accept your written comments or your emailed comments. Mr. Dunn, is there anyone else?
Currently, there's no one else that I see.
We'll wait a moment before we move on our agenda. Oh, do we have, it's true, I'm looking too many places not to, do we have anyone here who is, we do have people present here from the public. Does anyone here wish to make a comment on an agenda item at this time? And if so, can you come down to, we can get a microphone to them from right here.
Good.
Certainly. You can do whatever, you can ask whatever you would like.
Well, you can't do whatever you want, but you can ask
So
questions.
you can ask a question and we'll do our best to answer if we can.
My name's Jonathan Weinberg. I was just wondering, what are the disciplinary actions for students who don't adhere to like social distancing or wear masks in schools?
The question, I believe, was what are the disciplinary actions for someone who does not adhere to social distancing or wearing of masks? Superintendent, would you like to answer that question?
I have two wonderful administrators sitting right behind me, and they are in the, their boots are on the ground every day. So I'm going to turn to our two favorite, no, I shouldn't say that because then the rest of them will be upset with me, but Michael Reardon, principal, and Paulette, I think they can answer that.
Thank you.
Let me find a...
Hi, good evening, everyone. At the high school, we have a 3-strike rule that we've promulgated to the school community. So any combination of 3 violations of either not wearing a mask, wandering around the building, would result in being put on full remote for the rest of the semester. Yeah, I think our representatives, our student representatives can attest to that. Yeah.
So, Mr. Reardon, it would be my understanding, though, that the initial actions we take are educational in approach. What our goal here would be mostly to educate the students in the importance and the safety aspect of wearing masks and social distancing initially.
It always is. I personally made an effort to, in both the videos and then talking to the kids over the PA, to explain to them that we were in I think this has been pointed out 8.3 million times, extraordinary situation, that it was a chance for authentic learning in understanding how societies and communities respond to crises. And that, we didn't want it to make it compounded, the difficulty of the situation more by disciplining kids. And as I said, when we talked at the instructional committee recently, our students have been superb. And I do not use that adjective lightly. They've been superb in responding to this.
Okay, thank you. And I would expect that for anyone who has a medical or psychological limitation on being able to wear a mask, that there would be accommodations for those individuals.
Of
Is
course.
that true?
Of course.
All right, good. That's what I had hoped to hear. Thank you. Ms. Fitzgerald.
That's okay. Similar to the high school, we believe in progressive discipline, and discipline is teaching. So if a student is refusing to wear their mask, then there's a conversation, and we engage the parents as well. And eventually, you know, similar to what Mr. Reardon said, we have 3 strikes as well, and then the student would be moved to remote. We haven't really had any issues. A few reminders. Typically, once we sit down with the student and explain, again, the reason for the mask wearing, they've been really cooperative, really, really great. And one would think middle schoolers might struggle with this more than perhaps other age groups, but they're doing a really great job.
Okay, thank you. I want to stress that we cannot answer all questions from people who call in, but I felt that the informational aspect of this was important, and that parents and students had a very strong interest in knowing this. So I appreciate both of you coming in and answering the question, and I appreciate you answering the question, Superintendent. Do we have other questions? Certainly, come on down. And it doesn't have to be a question, it could be a comment, I'm sorry.
You could sing a song.
Thank you. My question is for the superintendent. So you discussed the creation of a committee focused on racial justice and equity. So my question for you is, have you discussed the place of the school resource officer in the high school?
Tell me your name.
Ms. West, if you would just kindly state your name for the record.
Sorry, I apologize. My name is Kate West.
Thank you.
Kate, as you know, we have a number of action items, and the SRO and the discussion around the SRO in schools is one of those action items, but to this point in time, we have not addressed that issue in terms of, but it is on our action item list. It may be a separate subcommittee. I'm going to let the advisory group determine that, and whether that will be part of the restorative justice practice work, or whether it will be a separate item, but we really haven't addressed it yet.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn, do we have any other questions from our remote public? Any other comments from on agenda items?
Let me check. I see nobody with their hand raised. I see nobody with a phone, but I will say the one that had chimed in with the under parent who was having difficulty has texted or put in the chat her comments, so I will read it. My 6th grader did amazingly during the completely remote session. He also completely loves being back hybrid. However, hybrid has proven to be tough with the lack of teacher contact. He has his remote days. Both my husband and I work outside of the home, and he is fending for himself on his 2 remote days. My suggestion would be to please, if possible, bring back 4 days of teacher instruction if he do decide to remote again. I also would like to see more support for those children who are alone at home during their remote days. I do find any of his teachers to be at fault for any. I do not find any of his teachers to be at fault for any of this. They are doing an amazing job with what is being handed to them, and they are trying their best. So I will also email that to all the board members as well.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, for the, and thank you to the parent who sent that, important comment. Is there anyone else in our auditorium who would like to make a comment at this time? Mr. Dunn, anyone waiting to make an agenda item comment in our waiting rooms for Teams or the phone?
Currently, no.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And I would like to thank everyone for who's either made a comment here in person or remotely. And remind everyone once again that there will be a second comment section for the public later in the meeting. But with that, Superintendent, we will discuss personnel.
Mr. Prince is on the call, and I think he's going to bring forward 2 names for nomination tonight.
Yes, thank you. We have 2 teacher nominations for tonight. One is Matthew Bodwell, a math teacher at Runlet High School. He'll be in the position for 138 days, which at the B1 rate gives him an annual salary of $33,922. And we had a late arrival today. We added this to your Google Drive. Her name is Gabrielle DiRenzo, and she's a special ed teacher at Krista McCullough School. She'll be in the position for 131 days at a master's step 2, which will give her an annual salary of $37,257. I would respectfully request that the board approve those nominations.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Do I have someone make a motion to approve the nominations of the 2 teachers that were just presented?
So moved.
I'll make them.
Okay, it was moved by Ms. Higgins and seconded by Mr. Crush. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any hands. Ms. Higgins, would you please call the vote?
I would. Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye, and I would just like to add that I'm extremely happy about Mr. Bodwell. I remember when he was a student at Concord High.
Yay. Gina?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
And I say aye. Thank you.
All right.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Motion passes on both of the hires. Thank you, Mr. Prince. Is there anything else for us this evening?
No, sir, that'll do it.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will move on to the Finance Committee report. Mr. Croto.
Okay, so given the fact that this Finance Committee report was given at the October meeting, given this meeting that the notes are written about in the book were not available in time for the October meeting booklet, but it was discussed and wonderfully done, I must say. So I'm not going to belabor the board any further. The notes are in there if you'd like them, and we have moved on to our actual vote of the tax rate and our meeting that we usually do annually for our budget. So this would be, unless anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions? No, and for the public, both the September 30th and the October 28th meeting is available to view on Concord TV, should you be interested in some more details. Thank you, Mr. Croto.
Yep.
Moving on to negotiations. Mr. Crush.
Yes, so a lengthy report. We met on October the 5th. We had a good meeting. We continue to work on collective bargaining agreements and memorandums of understanding, and we met on October the 5th. It was a good meeting, and that's my lengthy report.
Thank you, Mr. Crush, for your very succinct summary.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And now we'll move on to a instructional committee reports. There are 2 meetings. Ms. Higgins.
Okay, so our first meeting, which was October 5th, was a very refreshing meeting because we just talked about things that happen normally in schools, and we had a wonderful presentation from UNH on a couple of different apps around student safety and the ability to share things that might be happening with you and resources. As a health educator, I was riveted and really, really loved the idea that Concord was willing to do this for the students. So I hear that it's been going well and well received. So that's that just makes me feel good. We live in such crazy times where communication is rampant. Everyone's on their phones all the time, but nobody talks to anyone. And in scary situations, this can create a dynamic that someone my age can't really relate to in a way that kids do. And so the proactive nature of this program, the research behind it, was phenomenal. It was really, really well presented and well done. So that was that meeting. And then the second meeting was all of the reports from the administrators, sweet administrators, how hybrid was going at the schools. So we had a Beaver Meadow report at the first instructional committee meeting, because that was when the little ones first went, the K1, 6, and 9. And then our next one was when everyone came back. And like anything now, everything has good and bad with it. Some, logistics were the biggest problems. Uncertainty, communication, I think the elementary schools were the most smooth, but when you think about it, you've got these little buildings with small communities and everyone's sort of on the same page at the same time. The middle school and the high school had their logistical struggles and some stressful staff meetings, but all in all, the overwhelming report from the people, from the admins, was that it was going very well, and I continue to hear that. Of course, there are going to be bad days, but social distancing is going well, the mask wearing is going well, lots of stories of students that struggle with these things, being successful in school, teachers feeling very, very listened to and supported. As tough as this all is, as a former teacher in the district and as the chair of this committee, what I see is a group of people really working well together and kind of putting aside everything else and buckling down and holding hands and getting it done. Well, touching elbows, not holding hands. But so in general, the reports were well received. I also want to shout out to parents and staff members that are willing to speak up when they're not happy. We have gotten some great suggestions from families. Some of the emails are super helpful and really supportive. And as a board member, I appreciate the willingness for our administrators to communicate and share in a way that's really unprecedented in our district. So as hard as it is, and as taxing as those meetings can be, I feel that we've done a good job so far, and that in general things are marching along as best they can. So we'll see what happens next two instructional committee meetings. We'll see how I talk in December. But those meetings were excellent. If anyone has anything to add, that's fine. But
any comments from or anything to add from the board? No?
All right.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Communications and policy, Ms. Cannon.
Yep, just having trouble with my mute button. Sorry.
Okay. I was worried we'd lost you. Thank you. Ms. Cannon, your report.
Mute button. So we met on October 14th. We had, at the last full school board meeting, looked at the first reading of Policy 161, which was the new non-discrimination and equal opportunity employment policy, which I will remind everyone was necessitated by the new federal policy required by the Department of Education federally, so that all of the non-discrimination policies and harassment policies needed to be reviewed and updated to be compliant with the new federal regulations. So we ended up reading Policy 161, which is our endeavor to comply with that, as a part of the grievance committee, grievance policy. And so tonight we need to do a second reading of that policy and to vote to accept that as a policy, 161. And then as part of that, 161 will make policies 160, 412, 571, and 631. They would all be superseded by the new policy 161. So we need to vote to adopt 161 after a second reading, and then we need to, I'm not sure what the actual legal language, hold on. We need to delete, not repeal, but delete policies 160, 412, 571, and 631 as superseded.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cannon. Are you ready to make a motion on policy 161?
I'm happy to. I would move that we accept as written, and it's in the board packet, policy number 161, as required by the new federal regulations. And in so doing, accepting policy number 161, we would then delete as superseded policies number 412, 571, 631, and 160. I don't know, Mr. President, whether we need to do those as two separate motions.
I think I'd prefer to do it as two separate motions at this time. So let's stick with your motion to accept policy 161 if there is no objection from the rest of the board.
Could you just read the name of the new policy for the record?
Sure. The new policy is number 161. It is non-discrimination and equal opportunity employment.
Thank you. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Yep, I'll second it.
Okay, it is a motion made by Ms. Cannon and seconded by Mr. Croto. Discussion among the board members. Is there any discussion?
I can just tell you, sorry. I can tell you that we've had a lot of discussion over the past couple of years about policy 160 and all of the others that Ms. Cannon spoke of. And to finally have a policy that takes care of all of those certainly makes it cleaner and clearer for anyone reading those policies and using those policies. So this is a big step forward for us.
Thank you.
Tom answered my question. I wanted a little bit more explanation on why we would be getting rid of the others, but if one covers them all, then keep it simple.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Croto. Other board members, comments or questions? Seeing no more discussion, Ms. Higgins, can you call the roll for the vote, please?
I can. Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
And I'll say aye. 9-0, the motion passes.
Very good. So the second motion and from Ms. Cannon, I believe, is to delete policies number 160, number 412, number 571, and number 631 as redundant. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Second, motion made by Ms. Cannon and seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there discussion on the deletion of the policies? Not seeing anyone's hands, either remote or in person. Ms. Higgins, will you call a vote on that?
I'd be happy to. Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
And I'll say aye. 9-0, the motion passes.
Thank you. Ms. Cannon, do you have anything else from the Communications and Policy Committee?
Well, we actually continue to do some work on the anti-discrimination against transgender students policy, which at this point is in draft form only. But we would encourage members of the community, if they have something they'd like to say about that policy, to please write to us and tell us what you're thinking.
Thank you. Anything else?
Jim?
Yes, Mr. Croto, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Please.
That's correct. So I would just like to also extend our appreciation to Karen Fisher Anderson for her tremendous input into all of this work as well. It was very refreshing to have that viewpoint come through, and I thank her.
Thank you, Mr. Croto. Ms. Redmond-Skura.
As Ms. Cannon has mentioned, we're looking for input from the public, but especially input from transgender students or the parents of transgender students and the experiences they may have had in the situation, and particularly students who are in the middle school age group, and how their experiences might be affected by our policy.
Thank you. And that input can be directed to whom, so that we're clear for anyone that may be listening? Overall, it can come to the board, or it could go to...
Jim, it can come to me as chair of the policy.
Or it can, or thank you, Ms. Cannon. It can go to the overall board, or it can go to Gina Cannon as the chair of this committee. Thank you. Other comments from the board members or questions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Cannon. Next is Ms. Poirier, Joint City Council and School Board Committee.
Thank you. The City and Community Relations Committee met on October 16th. We met virtually with several members of the committee and the board, in addition to Mayor Boulay and the city manager and several city council members and other administrators. Great productive meeting. We haven't met in a long time, so it was nice to catch up. Very briefly, we talked about tomorrow's elections, which 2 of our schools are being used as polling places this time around, so the city extends their thanks to the district. And as a Ward 7 person, I want to thank the district for letting us use the much bigger space. It'll be really great. The Memorial Field bleachers are in need of complete renovation, and so we are going to continue that conversation with Jack Dunn and Matt Cashman, and also Brian LeBrun from the city staff. Develop a plan and see if we can help with some costs related to Memorial Field and much needed upkeep there. We talked about the stable building, and once again offered our support for the stable building being transferred to city ownership so that it can be used as a museum by the Abbott Downing Historical Society, which would be 100% responsible for funding and renovating the building for use by the public, and most particularly for school children. So that's an exciting project. We got an update on anti-racism work, which the superintendent briefed us on earlier. And we spoke a little bit about last month's decision to have Indigenous Peoples Day as our October holiday, the name change, which we encouraged the City Council to follow suit before next year's holiday. And then finally, we talked a little bit about the budget, which, as school board watchers know, has been finalized for our current school year, and we talked a little bit about next year and challenges that we see coming down the pike. But Mr. Dunn's done an outstanding job of getting us organized and filling some savings accounts so that we can smooth things out and not have a terrible fiscal time for the taxpayers of the city. So that actually was not as brief as I had intended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And moving on to other business, first item is...
I'm sorry.
We have a hand up, sorry.
See, I can never finish.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that we are meeting again on December 4th. So in keeping with the way the City Council has been meeting, that will also be a remote meeting. So anyone who wants to attend that committee meeting, that is December 4th, which is a Friday, 7:30 a.m. And it'll be in, I think they use Zoom. So just watch the website if that's of interest. Plus, we will have, I guess this is a formal invitation to our new members, who we will know who they are by then. So that might be kind of a nice way to get their feet wet with this committee, and hopefully join this committee in the new year. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Poirier. So moving on to other business, we need to canvass the vote as we do each election. Lyndon, would you like me to talk about this, or would you like to talk about it?
I would really only read what was on page 50, but why don't you go ahead and do that, Jim?
Certainly. So the RSA that governs recounts refers to a start date of the time period to request a recount as the date of the canvass of the votes. The school board conducts a canvass of votes with board members because if there is ever a request for a recount, the start date for the recount is from that actual canvass of votes with school board members. The board votes to allow, traditionally, and I would recommend it again this time, is that the board votes to allow the canvass of the votes by telephone, as there's nothing in the statute that requires an in-person board meeting. The date of the canvass is presented in the next month's board packet as an official document to the board. So at this time, I would like to make a motion that the board conduct the canvass of election votes by telephone to be done by the administration. Lyndon, on what date?
Well, I need to wait to get the actual numbers from the district clerk, Attorney Roger Phillips, and he needs to wait to get those numbers from the city clerk, Janice Bonifant. Given that this is going to be a significant election, I can't really predict. In other years and off years, we get them the next morning, but actually this is primarily for the person who is elected as the at-large member. As soon as we get the official numbers and as soon as I call each board member, and I do have a checklist, I make sure I give everyone a call, then we will be informing officially from the school board the person who's won the at-large election, and we will immediately move toward getting that person oriented and registered as an employee of the school district, and that can take a little bit of time. So I hope to have everyone canvassed by the end of the day Thursday, but that is dependent upon when the numbers come to me.
Okay, so therefore my motion would be to have the canvass of the vote by telephone as expeditiously after the results are relayed by the district clerk. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Is moved by myself and seconded by Ms. Higgins. Do we have any discussion among the board for allowing the canvass of the vote to take place by phone? Not seeing any. Ms. Higgins, will you call the roll for vote?
I will. Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
And I'll say aye for 9-0. Motion passes.
All right, so the motion has passed. Thank you, Lyndon, for doing that and doing all the legwork associated with that.
Certainly happy to help.
All right, next item is superintendent search and the discussion associated with that. Mr. Croto?
Okay, thank you. So I have a prepared statement, and if you'll bear with me, I'll read it. And I promise I'll read it quickly, but it'll make more sense. And so it's important that we as a board consider the position of Superintendent Murphy, that we postpone our search for another school year. And which means that if our situation with COVID changes, approximately 1 year from now, we'll be looking at beginning a new search. And that would hopefully go nationwide. We have full agreement from our folks at NESDEC that they will not charge us anything more than a nominal fee. They will not charge us the large fee that we've already paid. even though they've stuck with us through this year and will for next as well. So some of the reasons that we should consider postponing. Our advisors at New England School Development Council, told us that if we would not likely get a pool of qualified candidates, as few are willing to leave their districts during the pandemic. That putting together a search committee, I think Danielle Smith put this very succinctly the other night at the other meeting, putting together a search committee, again, made of teachers, students, parents, admin, and community members would be extremely difficult and imposing at this time. Outside of New England candidates may probably have to quarantine, which would make the process even more cumbersome. All interviews, of course, with the community meetings would be remote. We have a very good qualified interim superintendent right now that the board feels is doing a fine job. Dr. Murphy has been tireless and virtually unflappable in whenever she's had to, with whatever she's had to do in the district. She and her staff work every day to make sure that all students and family needs are met, and I know that that is a non-stop job. Since joining us on July 1st, she has been actively planning and implementing remote instruction for over 4,500 kids. The board certainly recognizes that this is a difficult time for students, families, and some staff. And despite that, Dr. Murphy and her team have had best efforts and are still, even though they have had good effort, there's still some work needed for improvement. So we're grateful that she's willing to stay to provide our stability to our district. She is hardworking, highly qualified, and loves the Concord School District. And if I can just take another 30 seconds and read just a couple of highlights of the things she's done and jumped into just since July 1. So she's created plans to support in-person instruction for the district's most vulnerable population, including our English language learners, students with disability, and homeless students. Worked with CRTC to support full-time in-person classes, worked with the athletic department to support resuming interscholastic programs. She's collaborated with the Title IX Safety Compliance Officer to implement action plans to address recommendations from the Perkins Report. She's worked with the Compliance Officer to develop policy and protocols for sexual harassment, discrimination, and student safety and violence. She's overseen the training delivered to all staff beginning the summer and continuing during the COVID year. She's brought a resource to the high school that will support student reporting of harassment issues. She has facilitated monthly meetings with a group of stakeholders of anti-racism advisory, which we talked about earlier today. She's developing an action plan with the advisory to assist members with a roadmap, initiated subcommittees to assist with the selection of facilitators to assist that work, and ongoing training with staff. So it's certainly open for board discussion. You know, I think that it makes great sense for our district to hold tight, work with Superintendent Murphy for another year, have her work with us. She is just now, you know, really understanding our district very well, and I think that could provide some great stuff for the future. And I leave it at that, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Croto. We did discuss this at some length at our last meeting, full board meeting. But I would, you know, it's a key item, and I'm open for discussion now. Does anybody have anything they would like to add? Yes, Ms. Higgins. I can't keep.
So in this conversation, not one to keep my mouth shut ever, what I came upon, and Jim, you've been on the board as long as I have, so in the 9 years, or 3 terms, 8, 9, whatever years, I've been a member of the board here, Kathleen is our 4th superintendent, and it's a huge shift for a district to have someone new at the helm. And 2 of those transitions from Superintendent Forston to Dr. Bass, those were tough times. And then we have COVID, and then Kathleen comes, and then now we're supposed to find somebody new. And my thoughts immediately actually went back to when we were interviewing Mr. Reardon for the high school, and so much of the staff just asked us to please, can we just have some stability? We have someone that we like, we have someone that we love that's working well. And all I could think about was everyone in this district, from teacher to teaching assistant to bus driver to cook to admin to students to parents, and we're already uncertain enough. And so we have someone that's doing a really good job steering the ship, and we might not know where we're going, but one of my biggest supporting aspects in sticking with Kathleen really went back to our district's rallying around Mike in our principal search, and it's we have the stability and these predictability that we wouldn't have otherwise. So my input on this is that in maintaining somebody that's found a niche and is doing a good job keeping us as stable as we can be, it would just make no sense to upset that apple cart right now. So that's my feeling.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Crush.
Yeah, thank you. So just 2 things briefly. One is, and the first comment is somewhat philosophical or theoretical. From a leadership management strategic standpoint, it doesn't make a lot of sense to change leaders in any situation in the middle of a crisis. I can't think of any leadership theory unless there's a real failure of leadership, which certainly is not the case here, that would advise or support, from a theoretical standpoint, changing leaders. So there's that. But from a personal standpoint, I'd like to say that, I have a tendency to push superintendents very hard, especially some of these meetings. And if you look back historically, there have been some uncomfortable moments, but I have seen nothing but knowledge from Kathleen. I've seen nothing but a dedication to doing the right thing and a commitment to the students and the city of Concord and the Concord School District. So, I guess I want to be clear, I guess, to the public, and I'm a big supporter of this, obviously, of this going in this direction. But I want to be clear that, Kathleen is more than qualified to do this job. She has succeeded in my mind. She is operating under unprecedented times, as we all are. So, do we all look back at the end of our day and think things we could have done better? I'm sure we all do. There's always opportunity for improvement. But I see a very committed professional who cares passionately about the Concord School District, and I am in full support of moving forward with her as our superintendent for the coming year, and appreciate her willingness to serve as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crush. Other comments? Mr. Parker.
Thank you. I echo what Chuck says, but I would add a few things. I credit the board with also managing what has been a very challenging situation for this community. And we needed someone who was seasoned and could handle something as challenging as this. And I was a big supporter of bringing Kathleen in. One of the things that I think has impressed me the most, something that I'm not able to do, which is really look at criticism as a part of the process and effectively answer questions of doubt, questions of disagreement, and be sincere in how she addresses that. And the board was put in really a challenging position when we had 2 candidates that wouldn't accept the position. I think Concord is a great district. I think it's an ideal job for someone that really wants to lead a very high quality school district. And there just was no one out there under the circumstances. And Kathleen and Dr. Bass really did an outstanding job, but I credit the board with making the decision to bring both of these people in and accomplish what we've been able to accomplish. This has not been easy. We don't always agree. And so I'm very, very happy to move in this direction for the time being, and then we'll see what happens moving forward. But thank you, Kathleen, and thank you to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Other comments from board members? I would like to say that I'm very anxious to do a permanent superintendent search. However, I want to express my appreciation to Mr. Betancourt and NESDEC for being willing to delay this so that we can have a successful search. I think it would be fiscally irresponsible to pursue a search at this time when we know that there is a very, very high probability that it would not provide the permanent candidate that we want. And then at this point, I would also like to add that I have worked with Superintendent Murphy over the last several months. I'm very, very impressed with the job that she's done. She, in her discussions with me, takes a long-term view and for the good of the district, is looking to make changes that put the district in a better position in the next decade, and I am very, very comfortable with pursuing extending her interim contract for an additional year. So is there anyone else who has any other any comments? Not seeing any. Mr. Croto, do you want to? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Cannon.
I just wanted to thank Superintendent Murphy for stepping into a somewhat thankless role at the beginning of her tenure and continuing to hang in there with us. These are not easy times, and I just appreciate her willingness to hang in there with us.
All right, thank you. Ms. Poinier, go ahead.
I'll just echo my thanks. I think we're very lucky to have found Superintendent Murphy, and I'm really grateful that she has agreed to stay for another year. I just wanted to make sure it's not public comment period, but I wonder if there are any members of the public that wanted to weigh in, since this, we wanted to do this openly and publicly, and I want to, since no members of the public commented previously, do we want to offer that chance before we vote?
That would be out of ordinary and out of the agenda. It would have been more appropriate for a public comment on agenda items earlier. However, if the board is willing to suspend the discussion and the vote, I would be inclined to allow it. I don't know if that's entirely correct, but I'm looking for comments from the board. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? We are right in a board discussion period prior to a vote. We could, I believe, defer the vote till after any sort of public input, but for the sake of allowing public input, I do not have a problem with it. Does someone else have an issue?
No, I think it's a good idea.
In that case, Jack, in that case, I will invite the public to make any comments with regards to our decision to defer our superintendent search until the fall of 2021. And Mr. Dunn, can you recognize anyone in the waiting room or on the phone?
Will do. So far, I don't see anybody with their hand raised or any phone numbers at the moment.
Well, let's wait a minute or two because we just made that statement and request. So, Mr. Dunn, do we have anyone there that would like to comment?
So far, no comment.
Is there anyone here who would like to comment at this time? Jack, unless we have someone in there, I would move on.
No comment so far.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Poinier. And at this point, if there is no further discussion by board members, Mr. Croto, if you'd like to make a motion that directs the president of the board to work with Mr. Dunn in extending the contract for Ms. Murphy an additional year, and then I don't know if we want to split this into two and then make a motion to, I don't even think we know if we have to make a motion to defer our superintendent search since we are in control of that timing. I'd be willing to entertain it, Mr. Croto.
Okay, well, I want to be sure that, yes, that happens, that the school board president, who is yourself, of course, meets with Jack Dunn and with Ms. Murphy to discuss the financial components and any benefits. But I also want to be sure that we have a motion that actually says that the board moves that we provide the interim contract to extend through 2021-22. So how do you want to approach that? Do you want to do two separate motions?
No, I think that's all one motion for superintendent, and then if, I don't know, do you want to make a motion that officially defers our search for the superintendent to the fall, to the next board, to the 2021 board?
Yes, so I will make that motion that the board accept the idea that the superintendent search be postponed, put off until the 2021-22 school year.
Okay, do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by, or moved by Mr. Croto and seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there further discussion? Not seeing anything or anyone's hand, and looking very hard to make sure I don't miss anyone. All right, Ms. Higgins, would you please call the roll for that vote?
Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
And I say aye. Motion passes 9-0.
All right. Mr. Croto, would you like to make a second motion that, at this one, which would instruct Mr. Dunn and myself to extend the contract for one additional year for Superintendent Murphy?
And I almost would say so moved, but...
Well, I didn't want to jump in and step on your toes. This is you and yourself and Ms. Smith worked very, very hard on this, and so I want to give both of you the opportunity to make any motions you'd like.
Okay, and so I'd be happy to defer to Ms. Smith if she'd like me to, or I will move forward.
Go for it.
I believe Ms. Smith is deferring to you.
Chip chop, Tommy boy.
So I would move that the board president meet with Mr. Dunn, our business administrator, and Ms. Murphy to work out a financial contract to extend her interim superintendency into the 2021-2022 school year.
I will second that.
All right, moved by Mr. Croto and seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion? Mr. Croto, I'll ask the question. I think I know the answer, and that is, upon conclusion of that action by Mr. Dunn and myself, that would come back to the board for final approval, correct?
I would ask that we proceed in the same way that we would for any contracted position, that once you've worked that out, that Mr. Prince put that into writing and bring that forward as a recommendation to the full board in the December meeting.
Thank you for answering my question. Excellent. Any other discussion? All right, then, Ms. Higgins, would you please call the roll for this vote?
I would be happy to. Liza?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Gina?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
And I say aye. Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you.
Kathleen.
Mr. Croto, do you have anything else for us for this evening?
I just again want to, I'd like to thank our search committee. They met remotely when this whole thing started a long time ago and interviewed a number of candidates. I know I thanked them then. I still want to thank them now. I mean, it's kind of been an unfulfilled committee, but we've moved in the right direction under the direction of our Dr. Bentoncourt, just knowing that that's his field and he knows what's best for our district and is instructing us that way. So a thanks to the search committee and our thanks to Dr. Bentoncourt for hanging with us.
Thank you, Mr. Croto, and on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank and recognize both yours and Ms. Smith's efforts over the past full year at least. So thank you. With that, we move on to the proposed calendar of meetings. Superintendent, do you have a calendar for us?
Certainly do. But before I do that, can I make a comment?
Yes, I suppose yes, you may.
So first of all, thank you. It's really an honor to serve the students and the families in the district, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's why I stay in this work. It's why I love this work. I'm so fortunate to be surrounded by people who want to make a difference and want to improve things for all of our kids, and that includes some of the folks that are sitting here with me tonight and those that are on the screen, as well as you as a board. And I've said this before, you make us better leaders because you have your thoughts and your opinions and your suggestions and your goals for your district that you represent and your constituents. And because you're active and you work harder than any board I've ever worked with, by the way. Maybe Nashua was close, but you really work hard. And because of that hard work, you make the leaders and the administrators and the staff and everyone that is here to do a service for kids better for it. So I think David was right when he talked about the board, and I am truly grateful for your support. This was really nice. I wasn't sure, to be honest with you, about tonight, and because I have to make hard decisions. I was praying last Friday that I didn't have to make a snow call, because that would have been really tough. But honestly, the decisions are difficult, and I get that, and I understand that, and I just hope that you know that I'll always make decisions based on what's best for our students. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Superintendent.
So getting on to business, keeping you busy, as I said. If you look at your November meeting, we've made some adjustments. So if you take a peek at your calendar, you'll see that this week we're going to do Election Day. I suspect there's going to be some tired souls on Wednesday and Thursday, so we're going to be quiet for a couple of days after our election. But if you look at the following week, you'll have we have a policy committee. We're working on that agenda now. Gina, Karen and I will give you a call to go over that agenda with you. We have a number of things we want to bring forward. Instructional committee on the 10th at 5:30. Then, of course, we celebrate Veterans Day and honoring our veterans and all of our military folks, our active duty, our National Guard, and reserves. So that's a very special day. And then on the 12th, I think if all goes well in the instructional committee, it would make sense for the board to come together with a special meeting. And we can talk about that on Thursday if you want, Jim, but I'm recommending that we do that so that we can solidify the plans for the families as we approach the holiday season.
Sure, I am fine with that. I want to make sure that we have enough advance public notice on that, with the meeting only being on the 10th, so
Yeah, I will do that. I will do that tomorrow. Right, I will do that first thing tomorrow and get those meetings posted and get them up and out.
Is there anyone on the board that would have difficulty participating in a November 12th meeting to address the actions for the holidays with regards to remote or hybrid with the schools? Yes, Ms. Bonino.
It sounds like it'll be likely to be a fairly short meeting, so we might consider doing it remotely.
Yes, we could do that one fully remote. I believe that the majority of discussion and public comment will take place on the 10th.
On the 10th, yeah.
Yes. Would that be good for everyone on the board? Yep. We would then have to publish that as definitely as a remote meeting?
Right, we'll do.
Okay.
We'll do.
Then that sounds fine.
So then we talked about, on the week of the 16th, we had 2 meetings, but we were talking about combining finance and instructional committee, and let me tell you why that I'm making that recommendation to you. We want to talk about enrollment, which impacts your budget as you approach the 21-22 budget. And we also will be talking about the athletic program in interscholastic as well as extracurricular, which is what the Finance Committee asked for, but it also impacts instruction. So Jack and I thought it would be really good if we could put finance and instruction together. We'll also, on the instructional meeting, have to look at the calendar, too. You have to make some decisions on calendar.
That's not the instructional committee meeting. The 18th isn't one that should take forever, so it makes sense to combine it based on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So, Superintendent, are we going to have a joint finance and capital facilities meeting on the 16th, and then a joint finance and instructional committee on the 18th?
No, we'll just have the finance committee meet with instructional committee on the 18th, and we will put off the capital facilities.
Okay, so that we will be postponing that meeting on the 16th?
On the 16th. We'll just postpone that for another date.
And I'm fine with that.
Okay. And then, of course, right before the holiday is your executive committee meeting on the 23rd. Recess for Thanksgiving is on the 25th, which is Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving, and then that's the holiday right through the weekend. If you look at December, you have on the 4th, is the city council meeting. I'll put that on the calendar. It's not on there yet, but that'll be again 7:30 Zoom. It'll be a virtual meeting. School board meeting on the 7th, instructional meeting on the 16th, and then the 21st will be a combination. I think you asked for that the last time. Was with an executive committee at 5 to develop the agenda for the January meeting, and a 5:30 communication policy meeting. We thought we could do it in the same night.
I think that was your desire because of the holiday season. And
Do we need a capital facilities meeting, since we're getting rid of November's? Do we need one in December?
Let's take a look at that and see if we want to add that into the December calendar. We have a
there is some work now, discussions, I should say, going on about, let's get started talking about the middle school. And so I think that's the focus, but they're not quite there yet, so they want to be able to have a good, robust discussion with you.
So we can leave it.
So let's defer that decision until our December meeting. We can schedule it in then.
Can we go over those dates again? You talked pretty fast.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Parker would like us to go over all those dates again.
Oh, just December and
for
January.
December.
Just December? All right, I'll go slow. The December 4th meeting is the meeting with the City Council and the Community Relations Committee. Dave, that's your committee. You're on that committee. And then on the 7th is your regularly scheduled monthly meeting. The 16th will be an instructional committee meeting. That will just kind of get us up to speed on what remote learning or whatever model we're using. And then the 21st will be the executive committee and policy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And is that everything for this evening?
That's it.
With this time, we have an opportunity for public comment on any topic whatsoever.
Mr. Richards, I think we have a
Mr. Dunn?
comment by Mr. Croto.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you. All right, Mr. Croto, sorry, you're all the way at the end. I didn't see you. I apologize.
Okay, just a question. Some people call this the elephant in the room, some call it the elephant on the table. Regardless, on the meeting on the 10th of November for the instructional committee, I know that that's going to take a lot of talk and discussion. What are we doing, Superintendent Murphy, about winter sports? And when do we talk about those?
We're going to talk about that on the 18th. The instructional committee on the 18th. I don't know if that's on the agenda up there. If you look at the agenda that Jack posted for November meetings, if you see that on the screen, you'll see athletic and extracurricular, which is winter sports. We're going to talk about calendar and enrollment report. All of those affect both finance as well as instruction. I'm sorry, I meant to mention that, Tom. That was a great...
That's quite all right. It's just I know the parents are out there already.
Right. I know that. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Croto. Is there any other business that anybody wants to bring up at this time? All right, Mr. Dunn, this is a period where we can have public comment. This is in accordance with Policy 132. We ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. And so is there anyone, Mr. Dunn, that is awaiting comment?
So currently I have no hands up and no phone numbers.
Let me look here. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comment on any topic? There are none here present. Let's wait a couple minutes, Jack, and see if anybody comes in.
I also have no comment coming into the email address, by the way.
Thank you, Lyndon. Well, I know that's not a couple minutes, but it seems like a couple minutes when you're sitting here. Jack, do we have anyone else? Do we have anyone waiting to make a public comment at this time?
So far, no hands raised or phone numbers present.
All right. I want to thank everyone. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Higgins. Do I have a second?
Don't we need to do the non-public thing?
Yeah,
Oh, we have one other item,
right,
sorry.
we do. So what I am advising you to do is to recess this meeting, go into non-public for the purpose of 91 C.
Should be on your screen in a moment.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay.
And then we can come back and adjourn the meeting. That's...
Thank you, Superintendent. I will make the motion that we recess this meeting and go into a non-public session per RSA 91A-C, which is for, what is the, I don't have that right in front of me right now as far
For
as
the purpose of discussing a student matter.
Okay, for the purpose of discussing a student matter. Thank you, Superintendent. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made by myself and then seconded by Ms. Cannon. Is there any discussion? Ms. Higgins, will you call the roll for this vote?
I will. Aye. I'm sorry. Liza? Aye. Jim?
Aye.
Danielle?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Chuck?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
And me. Okay, it passes 9-0.
All right. Josh, can you shut us down? And Mr. and Jack, will you tell us the All right, so thank you very much. We are back. At this point, I would like to make a motion to seal the minutes of our non-public portion of the meeting pursuant to the reasons we went into it, 91A,
I think the only one was
C3,
Roman numeral 2.
My timer on my
C, right.
sorry.
toolbar,
I'll get that
4
right for you.
hours, 6 minutes, 49 seconds.
And do I have a second to seal the minutes?
Barb seconds.
Seconded by
I kept
Ms.
looking at it
Higgins.
earlier, doing.
All right, we need a roll call vote.
Liza.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Danielle.
Aye.
Gina.
I don't think they can hear.
They can't hear us.
They're not, so we're having this meeting and they're not even on it. Why can't they hear us? Josh?
So, Jim,
No, we can hear you, Jim.
We hear you.
We got David,
When I call your
Chuck,
name, wave. Give me a
Maureen,
thumbs up, and that
Tom.
means...
Here.
everybody's here.
Okay, so I just made the motion to seal the minutes pursuant to the reason we went in, 91A, whatever,
So,
2.
when I call their name, they can give me a
come out of
thumbs up, yes?
non-public session first, and then vote to seal the minutes?
So, yeah, I just made a motion to seal the minutes pursuant to the reason we went into non-public, and Barb seconded it.
I think what Lyndon just said was
You have to redo the
that we needed to come out of,
private.
we needed to come out of non-public, then we vote to seal the minute.
You did.
Is that correct?
But we did come out of non-public with, I thought the vote was to come out of non-public when we were in non-public, and now that we're in public, we need to seal the minutes.
Right.
That's right.
So that vote has already taken place, and we're working on sealing the minutes.
So if we can't hear them, can they give me a thumbs up, and that means they're happy to...
I don't know, I can hear, well, Chuck can give a thumbs up. Oh, we can't hear them.
I can hear.
I can hear Chuck,
I can hear.
and we can hear you, so we're good.
All right, then I'm going to start over, so everyone pay attention. Liza. Aye. Jim.
Aye.
Danielle.
Aye.
Gina.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chuck.
Aye.
Maureen.
Aye.
And me.
So,
No, let's go home.
the motion passes, and at that point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Oh,
All right. Moved by Barb, seconded by Tom. All right, this can be a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, everyone, for a long but good meeting. Not as long as some of them.